Okay, so before we head out to start tackling our fence installation project, we're going to talk about some of the fencing materials and tools that we used on our project. So we decided to go with sheep and goat fence, 48 inches high, 4 foot high. These come in 330 foot long rolls, and we picked up 2 of those to actually do our project with making the 4 pins with this, which are 30 by 100 foot for each of the pins. We went with T-posts for our in-between posts. We went with steel pipe for our corners and for where our gates will be installed at. So with this, we needed T-post clips, and we also used the galvanized wire, steel wire, for tying, especially around the bottoms where it's a little bit harder to get the T-post clips on. And then when we actually attach the fence to the steel posts, we used some in those areas depending upon how everything worked out. Another thing we needed for this was wire-filled gates, 4 foot wide, post hinge for hanging the gates, carriage bolts for installing those post hinges, and then we also used wire splice ferrules for actually tying in our fence wire to the steel posts. The tools we actually needed for this project include a post driver for driving the posts, and the typical T-post drivers that you can find at Home Depot, Tractor Supply, Home Base, whatnot. They will accommodate 2 3/8 inch steel pipe posts. You ain't got a lot of wiggle room, but you can use it. Fencing pliers, bolt cutters for cutting the fence. Obviously, if we're only doing 100 foot long, I'm not going to take and wrap the fence around because then I don't get the pull on it that it needs. So at those points, fences cut. That's what the bolt cutters come in handy for, because the cutter on the wire pliers themselves can be a little bit rough to use. It can be done, but it just makes it easier using bolt cutters. And then we've got a woven wire fence stretcher, depending upon the type of wire you're using. There's also a barbed wire stretcher. There's one for chain link. So take a look at the material you're using. A lot of them will have, and the length or the height of your material, as there are different types of stretchers that you can use to pull the tension on that type of fencing material. We've got a cable hoist puller, most of us call and refer to as a come along, chain, and a clip bender. So the come along and the chain is used along with the fence stretcher to be able to pull the tension on the fence. Biggest thing is you got to have some place you can hook up to, which depending upon how you're situated, you can use the truck for it. You may have a tree nearby that you can actually wrap around so you can get some tension pulled. Just depends upon where you're at, what you have available is what you use. That's a big reason when we was talking in prior video about your dead man and your H braces, it's because you're going to be pulling tension on that fence. You can't just tie up the one end, roll out your fence, pull it by hand, and expect it to really hold anything, because you're not going to have it very tight. It'd be hand tight, but if you get anything pushing on it, you're going to notice almost immediately the sag in the areas where they're pushing against it. So you always want to try and put some tension. Not every fence is meant for high tension, but even the low tension fences, you got to put some tension on them in order for them to maintain their viability as actually being a fence and not just an annoying thing for the animal to walk over. You may use other items, just like if when you're driving posts, you don't have to do it manually. And honestly, I'd recommend, if you can, go out, get a skid steer or a tractor that you can use a driver on and do it that way. That way you're not breaking your back, killing your hands, trying to drive the post by hand, especially if you're in a rocky area. You'll get tired of that quick, fast, and in a hurry. We cheated a little bit when we did ours just because, and you'll see in the videos, they're going in pretty easy, which is really odd for us because we have clay that when it gets dry, it is super hard, and we have what we call shelf rocks, or refer to them as shelf rocks, because you'll go down and you start digging, and you think you got this little bitty rock. Next thing you know, you've dug out 3 feet wide by 5 feet across, and you pull up this thin 1 to 2 inch thick rock. So, and our place is covered in those. We cheated because all the rain we had this spring, we actually drove the post in while the ground was still wet, so the rocks were able to move in the ground, and we were able to cheat and get the post driven in pretty easily by hand, which is odd.